horses. So they called all of the vets in the area and said, please help us with these horses. And I've found a lot of fulfillment in doing that, and seeing the horses go from such a state of starvation and neglect back to happy and healthy and being ridden, it was really inspiring to me. So I knew that the next phase of my career was going to have to involve rescue horses.
Moving into the rescue and intake process, when a horse first arrives, what is the first thing you and your team do?
Well, the very first thing we do is we give the animal a very thorough check over. We check it from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail. And some of the things we're looking for is how skinny are they? How much weight do they need to gain? Are their teeth okay? Are they showing any signs of infectious disease? Are there any wounds or injuries that this horse has had that haven't been cared for? And are they overall okay? Or do they really need immediate care?
What are some of the most common medical conditions you see in rescued horses?
Most of the time in rescued horses, it's not so much cases of abuse, it's just cases of neglect. Horses are expensive. So when people who have horses love them and they have enough money to take care of them, things are great. Then something happens and the person doesn't have the money to call the vet out anymore or to pay the farrier to trim their feet. And then usually when the money really runs out, that's when they can't afford to feed the horses anymore. So when horses come to us, they're typically pretty darn skinny. They haven't had their feet trimmed in a long time, and they have wounds or injuries that haven't been cared for, and their teeth haven't been cared for.
Can you describe the process of stabilizing an emaciated or injured horse?
So the very first thing that we do when we have an emaciated horse is we deworm them right away as soon as they come in, just in case parasites are part of the reason they're so skinny. And then we start off feeding them very small amounts of a really nutritious hay frequently. And then we don't want to overwhelm them. So we start off with that and give them a couple days to adjust to that. And then if they're doing well, that's when we start increasing the feed. It's amazing to me how often horses will come in and the very first thing they'll go to is the water bucket. And they'll just drink and drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. And then they start looking around for something to nibble.
What diagnostic tools or tests do you use to assess a horse's condition?
So a lot of the tools that I use to look at a horse are these. I feel everything. That can give me a lot of information. I look at everything. I smell their breath, believe it or not, to see if I can smell any rotten teeth. Then I use my stethoscope to listen to their heart and lungs. I'll use a thermometer to take their temperature. If I see something that, like the horse is limping, I'll pick out their hooves with a hoof pick, and then I'll put a set of hoof testers on to see if I can find a sore spot in their foot.
How do you determine a horse's age when they arrive?
So looking at a horse's teeth is pretty much the only way we have of determining how old they are. When they're very young, it's pretty easy because we can just count to see how many baby teeth they have and how many adult teeth they have. And we can get a pretty good idea of how old they are with that. But once all their adult teeth come in at 5, then it kind of becomes a guessing game. I can look at the grinding surface of their front teeth and see some anatomical differences that'll give me an age range. If I look at the back of their mouth, where the cheek teeth are, where they grind up all the hay, I can see some changes back there that'll indicate whether they're middle-aged, elderly, or ancient, but I can't determine an exact number.
Are there any diseases or illnesses that are more common in rescued horses?
There are some diseases that I particularly look for in rescued horses. When they're really, really skinny, it really takes out their immune system. So they can get lice. Pretty much the only time I've seen lice is in rescue horses. The other conditions that we see very often is an infection of the soft tissues on the bottom of their feet. It's called thrush. It's basically the equivalent of athlete's foot for horses. It's from standing in really moist, nasty environments. And then sometimes if they have not had their skin cared for, like they haven't been groomed in forever, I'll see a lot of dermatitis on their back. We call that rain rot.
Moving into veterinary care and recovery, what does a typical recovery timeline for a rescued horse look like?
Most of the time, we're somewhere between a month to 3 months for a horse to recover. The maximum amount of weight gain a day is about 1 pound. So if they need 150 pounds, it's going to take 150 days. So we do have some cases where the horses get up to speed faster. But for the most part, by about 3 months, we kind of know where we're going to end up.
Would you say 150 pounds is the most common a rescued horse comes in underweight?
Yeah, it's usually anywhere from 100 to 300 pounds, but most of them are in that 150 range.
How do you create a nutrition plan for a malnourished horse?
The most important thing for me creating a nutrition plan for the horse is I've got to get in their mouth and see what kind of shape their teeth are in. It's not uncommon for us to get really old horses that have lost a lot of teeth, or the teeth that they have are so worn down that they can't actually grind anymore. And then those horses, we have special feeds that we can give them that are already chopped up hay so that they don't have to chew the hay. And they still get the nutrition from it.
What would you say is the biggest challenge in treating long-term neglect?
The biggest challenge in treating long-term neglect is the horses that have completely shut down emotionally. They've been in such traumatic, horrible conditions for so long that they just don't care about anything anymore. That can be really difficult to overcome. You can get their bodies healthy, but their brains, you can't fix it.
Can you share an example of a horse with a remarkable recovery story?
Oh, I have so many horses with remarkable recovery stories here. Some of my favorites are a horse that came in with a horrible, horrible wound on its leg, and we just kept treating it and treating it and treating it, and the healthier she got, the faster that wound healed. And by the time she was ready to go for adoption, you couldn't even tell which leg it was injured on. That made me feel really good.
Speaking of wounds, how do you manage pain in horses that have suffered injuries?
So we have a couple different options as far as pain control. Our most common one is the cheapest and easiest, which is called Bute. It comes in either a tablet or a powder that you scoop them onto their food. So that I use a lot. If a horse has an upset stomach though, the Bute can make that worse. So we have another drug that we use called Equiox, and that seems to be a little bit more soothing for the gut, and that helps decrease inflammation. Some of the other ways I address pain is making sure that they're getting turned out with the right group of horses. If they're a little sore and a little stiff, I'm not going to put them in with the youngsters who are going to play all rambunctious and crazy. I'm going to put them in with other horses that are pretty mellow. Some of the other things I use is we love joint supplements here. There's 100 different kinds of joint supplement, and I usually just take whatever we get donated, and it does seem to help those older horses to just have a little bit of stiffness, a little bit of achiness.
How do you determine when a horse is ready for adoption?
So when we assess a horse for adoptability, we'll